Well, good morning, everybody. Here on Friday, what I want to cover in the forecast video is going to start with a discussion on the frost that's moving through the Great Lakes right now. And then we're going to stretch this out looking at the recent precipitation patterns, watching the drought expand in certain areas while other areas have been completely flooded. And we're going to talk about where this pattern may go at the rest of May. There's some discussion about the risk of severe storms returning in kind of a bigger fashion. I want to show you what I see right now in the models and why it makes sense to see it, but at the same time understand the uncertainty. Then we're going to talk about where we think this pattern is going to go for the rest of May, looking at the longer range ECMWF weeklies. And I'm actually going to take you not just through May, but the newest run goes all the way out to the summer solstice, June 21. So we'll take a look at that. At the end, I'm going to compare the new model runs from the NMME and the ECMWF for summer to the previous runs to show you what changed. And I want to look back at the model performance from 2023 into 2024 for summer. And we're going to look at those stats. We're going to finish a bit with just one last thing to think about with these ocean temperatures, okay? So that's us playing. So the map you've been watching, the animation, is showing you last night the clear skies and the very light winds around the Great Lakes. And as a result of the clearing out behind this system, this is an area where last night we had strong radiational cooling. Now to the south of it, a lot of severe weather. These storms into this area dropped some large hail at times. We also watched some very large storms come up into parts of Texas and out into the Gulf of Mexico, and some much needed rain, again, from these isolated storm events that have been in parts of Florida. But just focusing on one area first, I want to show you the cooler weather that did come into this region. Now, this morning about 6 a.m., I was taking a look at the temperatures, and again, I make a pretty distinct color change in my color bar around 33 degrees. So we can just kind of identify where the temperatures could be at freezing. So at 6 a.m. this morning, I did have a couple of the stations I just monitor closely below freezing. And so this is pretty chilly air. So I went and looked at the surface obs at that time. And when you see an open circle with no wind bar, that means the winds were calm, which we certainly had in a lot of Wisconsin and Michigan. And we do take note that we had several locations here that were down into the upper 20s, giving us a frost event across parts of Wisconsin, possibly clipping sections of northern Illinois as well. Northern Indiana got pretty chilly. I imagine there was some patchy frost in northern Indiana, but a lot in central Michigan as we went through the overnight hours. The National Weather Service did have finally issued yesterday the frost risk and the freeze warning for this area. You can also see in parts of Ohio, Pennsylvania, and along this side of the Appalachian Mountains, they're concerned about that as well. To the south, it's going to be a story of flooding spreading into this region. We have a dense fog pushing up against the Smokies here, and then you can see the flood watch has been issued for parts of the Northeast as well. On the backside, we're going to talk about winds, the pickup in wind speed in this area in the northern plains as this forecast goes forward, and the heat. We're going to get temperatures deep into the 90s here very soon. I'll show you that in a few moments. But I wanted just to bring up some maps that we've been looking at for the last several weeks. The probability of a frost event, where we had one this morning. In northern Illinois, northern Indiana, that's quite rare. Less than a 20% chance of having a frost after today's date. But the farther you go into Wisconsin and into lower Michigan, this is not uncommon. It's just we saw a lot of signals in the longer range models for warmth, right? We talked extensively about that over the last few weeks. And this one event, I mean, the temperature's going to rebound like crazy today, but it didn't matter. We touched it this morning, and that's the issue on the frost. So I imagine there's going to be quite a bit of crop damage in this area. On the backside, I just want to make note of how still in the Dakotas, parts of Nebraska, it's very common to have a frost after today. But I was thinking about this specifically for Madison, Wisconsin. I was talking with a colleague of mine that I work with here, Andrew Trucker. We were just looking at some of the damage to the crop from the colder weather. And just to make a point here, in Madison, we still typically have about 10 days historically in the last 40 years where we had a frost after today. And so it's just kind of to make a case for why we have to continue to monitor these temperatures despite what the models suggested. So this is something that I would say that I missed looking at all that long-range support. I said, hey, I think we have warmer conditions, but man, we just dove down there and touched it this morning. Now, I noticed, I don't know if you did a moment ago, but I was watching the satellite data. There was one other neat thing I want to point out to you. We're back in Mexico, where earlier this week we looked at the drought conditions here. There's the Rio Grande, so you're into Texas. And this was the satellite animation from the deep storms yesterday. Now, the outflow from these storms went over the Rio Grande here. And then look at the dust storms they produced going into Mexico. Do you see this? Look right here and here. Absolutely breathtaking view from satellite of outflow-driven dust storms. Of course, these are called haboobs, and on the backside, you can see the wildfires still going in parts of Mexico. That's a satellite animation I'm going to save. On one side, deep convection, plenty of access to Gulf moisture, including a huge squall line that raced, out into the Gulf of Mexico last night. And it was just blazing with lightning. But on the backside, this is just something impressive to take a look at here. All right, from there, I need to bring you up to speed on stats. So I figured I'd go back from April 8th to May 8th. And there's a couple of areas I want to focus in on. For the end of the wet season, Northern California, Oregon, and Washington have been exceptionally dry. Very, very dry. And we can blame this, I think, a lot on the very northward displaced jet. And while farther to the south, the little cutoff lows that keep meandering through this area have kept so much of New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, southern parts of Colorado, getting into southern parts of Kansas wet. We've been drier north of that, extremely dry. I mean, there are places in Nebraska here. I mean, I'm kind of circling a spot we've looked at several times, Kearney, Nebraska, right there on I-80. 128 out of 133 in terms of dryness for the stretch of April 8th to May 8th. This is extended into parts of Minnesota, western Iowa. It's got northern Illinois, northern Indiana, parts of lower Michigan. And then we can see how dry we've been at times from the southeast up to the mid-Atlantic. Florida's been extremely dry as well. Now, this area is about to get hammered with rain. But I'm going to come back to that in a minute because I want to show you some soil moisture updates. This is the latest 40 centimeters, so this is 0 to 40 centimeters. It's a rank, so think percentile rank, not percentage. And it just shows you how saturated these soils are in these areas versus the dryness that's been here and here. Look at this. It's also in Montana. It's in the Willamette Valley. It's in sections of Oregon and Washington. And then as we take you down deeper, this is going down to 100 centimeters. That is still fall's drought. But we've not recovered spring rains in this area. And I've spent the last several days in Colorado. We were catching the very northern edge of the heavy rains up in Loveland, Colorado. But into the northeast Colorado, nothing. And then you got into Nebraska, extremely dry in places as well. So a friend of mine contacted me. His name's Eric Hunt. We've done a webinar with him. He's a great guy, brilliant scientist. Love talking and working with him. And he is a contributor to the drought monitor. So his recommendations are considered and often taken by the drought people that make the drought monitor at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. So he asks for major degradation and drought. And what we see here is while we have made a huge recovery south lately, the degradation continues to get worse for those areas that we just kind of pointed out a moment ago. Now, we're about to wipe this out with heavy, heavy rain into the southeast, but this is going to be an area of concern as we go forward. So Eric asked for a degradation. Let's go see if he got it. We're going to go to the change maps, and you can see just in the last week there was a degradation in here, but I think he was asking actually for a much greater change in the map. So let's actually just do one other thing. Let's go back a month and just see where we've continued to watch drought build and where it's been relieved. And I think this is going to be very informative on what summer could look like in terms of drought building in places. I'll come back to that in a few minutes here. All right, when we look over the next 5 days, high pressure is dominating. We're going to watch flow coming into the west but getting into the Canadian prairies. So that's why this whole region is quite dry. Very strong winds north, but quite dry. You then take a look at how wet the southeast is going to be, and we have places that are going to be 3 to 4 inches just the next 5 days, 3 to 4 inches wetter than average. Now, if we take a step from here and look at the whole 7-day, there are pockets in here that need 7 days of dryness. And there are other places very close by that need rain. So this is the precipitation disparity inside of this region has been huge. But you see we have rains working against that longer-term drought stress that's been building in parts of the southeast to the mid-Atlantic. Now what's interesting is if I do one more click on this, I'm at day 4 through 10. And this is what's got a lot of us intrigued. There's something coming through here, and I'm going to show it to you in the model run in a moment, that I think we need to be very aware of, and then what follows it. And I want to show you what I think that might mean in terms of severe weather risk and other things like that. But if we just do something here real quick while we're on this, let's go to total precipitation. Let's look nationally and just kind of add this up. So as I play this forward, there is the incredibly heavy rain through the weekend that's going to hit parts of the southeast. We then go beyond that, and you start to see rain moving into Montana, getting into North Dakota. When is this? This is next Tuesday, Wednesday. And then we just play this all the way out, almost 10 days. And those areas that I've been concerned about here not expecting much. I mean, I could continue that into this part of Iowa, northern Missouri, parts of Illinois. I mean, you see moisture here, but it's not as though we're just breaking through the long-standing drought issues. What I'm concerned about with this is where we might be going in terms of the severe weather. Now, the reason I have that concern is because of the upper level high pattern. So what we're watching again here is just jet stream level winds, okay? As we play this through Friday into Saturday, there's the low underneath the larger ridge. So the ridge is what's supporting the heat coming in behind this and the very dry conditions. The trough to its south, the cutoff low, is what is soaking the southeast on its exit side to the east. But what will be interesting to see is that by Monday, there we go, into Tuesday, we see one low sitting and spinning here. That's why this is a multi-day rainfall event. And then that comes through. The jet's still pretty far to the north, relatively weak, and this trough ejects through the Four Corners states. And by the time we get into next Wednesday, there's going to be a discussion about, are we able to open up Gulf moisture here in order to deliver the risk of a large severe weather event. Now, I'm all the way out to next Wednesday in the forecast already. It will depend on the placement of surface high pressure here to open up the Gulf once again. But then as we go beyond this is next Thursday into Friday, that jet streak moves over Missouri, Illinois, Indiana through the eastern Corn Belt. We then watch the next wave come through, and this one's really caught my attention. When is it? Maybe it's Sunday, May 18th. Ridge west, trough ejecting. It's got a bit of a tilt to it. There's actually some subtropical flow on the bottom side. And this is what may be a pretty significant severe weather producer when we get out there. It's 10 days from now. But we're going to have to keep, just a close eye on when and where that thing might get here. So thinking this through, I just want to show you that next system, okay, where are we in time? What is it? Sunday, is what's being captured by the European model day 8 through 14. So anytime we see a week 2 forecast that's got precipitation anomalies that have that look, this says trough coming through and ejecting. There's your dry slot in through this region, okay? And it's going to tap into Gulf moisture, and it's probably going to lift, meaning it's going to go in this direction. And that's why we don't see the wetter than average conditions here, too much high pressure. And it's just been a consistent theme in some of the models. Now, I know a lot of my friends and colleagues like to pay attention to Victor Cassini's page. I do too, because we started to see one of our models, one that we don't typically use on, like a week 1, week 2 basis, showing pretty significant risk into week 2 here for severe weather. This is a supercell composite parameter where we're just looking at the environmental conditions that would be ripe to make supercells. And you can see that it's gone over saturated from the 16th to the 22nd. The 23rd through the 29th is also seeing the southern plains, according to the CFS model, go over to risk of severe weather. But I'm going to show you the new European, and I want you to compare the two with me in just a few moments. Okay? There is one thing I do want to take note of. I'm going to come back to this. Actually, let's go back one more. I want to show you, there we go. Let's look at CAPE, convective available potential energy. And what I'm curious about is how much we open the instability of the atmosphere for that system. When is it? There it is, next Tuesday into Wednesday. See this? So this is right now where the models have destabilized the atmosphere. Again, next Tuesday really into Wednesday. And what I want to check out is at the very, wow, look at that, really pushing this over to the Mid-South by Thursday. We're going to have to watch it. And then we get out there toward that Saturday, Sunday event. And there it is again. We are opening up, according to the model, to a corridor of instability twice next week. One is Wednesday, Thursday, progressing east. The other one is Saturday, Sunday, again, hitting the plains and pressing east. Question is, how far is that dry line to the east? So that'll be the discussion we will have, but I've got to wait. I've got to see more model runs, and so it'll just come back up on Monday, okay? So where are we right now? Sorry about all that, but that's what I'm thinking longer term. Across the top is the SPC outlooks for the next 3 days. Across the bottom is the excessive rainfall. And what you notice is southeast, southeast, southeast. Okay? If we have a look right now at our radar, these were the storms that dropped a lot of hail, some straight line wind damage yesterday. Here is part of the system that left Texas, big monster squall line here. But this is the southern side of that cutoff low that's going to hit the southeast for multiple days in a row, bringing in a lot of heavy rain. So here it is. Here's our next 7 days. Now looking at just a total precip map from NOAA. I showed you the European a moment ago. Here's NOAA's rundown. This is the system that the first of two big systems that we'll come back to in a moment. But that's the rain in the southeast, which I want you to see a little closer. WPC still has widespread 3, 4, 5 inches of rain for parts of Georgia, Florida. Surrounding states looking at 2, maybe 3 inches of total precipitation. I'll give you the probabilities in a moment. But I want to give you kind of some idea on the timing. Now, of course, I was looking at this before I started recording, and guess where I left it? On that Sunday, May 18th system. And right now, the European model is opening up severe weather here, heavy rains coming in around this direction, and snow on the backside. Now, that's 10 days from now. That's the second big one. Can I take you back to where we are now? So the European model, watch this system over the south. Here it is. That's now getting through Saturday morning, getting Sunday morning, Monday morning, Tuesday morning. Do you see that? That's 3 days of heavy rain in the southeast. Here comes the trough we have to talk about for next Wednesday, Thursday in the midsection of the country. Ahead of it, it's hitting Northern California and Oregon, and watch it come across the mountains. There it is. And it's going to eject as one low leaves. It's going to come out into Wyoming and go straight toward the Dakotas. So let me rock back and forth. Now, what's interesting about this is the front on the southern side of this has scoured this whole region of moisture. You just have the upper level system sitting here. So there is no return flow ahead of this next low that's coming out going in this direction. So again, next Wednesday, there it is, Thursday, that low is only capable of producing its heaviest rains pretty far to the north where the greatest forcing is going to be. And we don't see this kind of running down the southern side producing a big severe weather outbreak. It's this, the previous system stole the moisture. But if that system goes north, we get recovery of the Gulf into Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And that's when the new low opens up. So if you're in the midsection of the country, you're watching midweek next week and then next weekend. If you're in the southeast, you're watching the next 4 days. If you're in the northwest, these systems get to you 2 days before I told you they're going to come to the Midwest. Okay? So with all of that being said, let's go now look at the likelihood of this happening. That is the Wednesday morning storm system. We notice that the European model has a high concentration of low pressure in the plains. That's the second one. So remember, this one comes through the northwest first and then rips out into the midsection of the country. We know this is going to be followed, so there it goes. That's Friday. Saturday, Sunday, it's going to be followed by another Lee troughing event here. Lee of the Rockies troughing. See how the model's dropping low pressure? That's the one I think has the greatest risk of producing severe weather for the south again. So probability-wise, your next 7 days, what's your chance of getting over an inch? Well, it's capturing the first system. The second system. I should never number these. I apologize for that. Your first one's down here. That's the soaker. This is number 2. This is the one that comes through here, ejects by next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Then you have the third system, which is not shown here, that comes out into the midsection of the country the following weekend. So that's your probability of an inch. Let's step this up. That's, darn it. This is the probability of 2 inches in the next 10 days. Let's get it out there. There you go. And the probability of 4. So what do we see down here in parts of Florida, Georgia, southern parts of North Carolina, and all of South Carolina? 50 to 70% chance. On the dry side, this is the probability of staying under a ½ inch. And now remember, if I eliminate, let's just go back there. If I eliminate that system that's not this weekend but next weekend, we're very dry in this area, which has been an ongoing story, right? That's what we've seen. Okay, what is happening with that next system? Sunday, it's in the ensemble, right there. But in the AI model, it looks a little different. See where the low is in the AI model? That's a cutoff feature. That means cool. And what it's doing is it's just driving it into the northeast. It's a single AI model run. So we do not give these tremendous amounts of credit. But you know what that gets me worried about is what the temperatures might do out there in addition to the rainfall. So the AI model, instead of dropping in a big severe weather event here, follows the cutoff low with a band of precip, matures it over the northeast, making it wet, but no severe weather outbreak. And the other consequence of this is, look what the AI model does out there day 10 through 15 when that system goes through to the temperatures versus the GFS ensemble and the European ensemble. See how much colder it is? So I think this is important to monitor these differences, and I'll watch them all weekend, but you can too on AgWeather. Just go out there and do it. It's something fun to do. Just play around with the website. All right, so that now gets us into more of a discussion on temperatures. Now, we knew we had our frost risk here. Been monitoring that this week. Okay, but that's your next 7 days overall. What are these temperatures expected to do? Watch the recovery here. Because while we started off cold this morning in Wisconsin, 32, 30, 27, we're going to be in the low 70s by the afternoon. So, yeah, 40-degree swing in temperature in a single day. The coldest air goes into the northeast compared to average. And watch the heat come out of the west and go into Montana, North Dakota. Sunday's high temperatures in central North Dakota could be knocking on 96 degrees Fahrenheit. Meanwhile, under cloud cover, backside of a low, New Orleans 75. We then go here Monday, Tuesday. Now you know what's happening next Tuesday, Wednesday. Next trough comes in. That's the first system that comes through and runs out. This is while we watch the low exit, so we're not going to be seeing the major moisture return here, setting up the severe weather. That is the system that's next Saturday, Sunday. And this map only goes out 7 days. So we'll keep an eye on all of that. Okay, remember a while ago I said, hey, the CFSV2 is really active on that week 3 severe weather threat in the southern plains? Well, the European model isn't. That's the new outlook from starting on week 3 and going all the way out to June 21st. So this is the month of May 21 to June 21. And it has just dropped a line right in through here. Wet is east and west of that line is dry. Drier. Be careful with my wording here. Now that's been a pretty consistent theme in the model. In fact, if you just kind of have a look at it, what was it doing yesterday? Very similar thing. What was it doing the day before that? Very similar thing, showing this dryness in here. So we've seen this model trending toward that thought process to finish May and to start June, maybe more of June, which just gets me thinking, what's driving the model? Is there any sort of discernible global signal? And I'm just going to tell you right now, it's not the MJO. I think you can make a case that it's very difficult to pin down any individual global teleconnection, but I think what I'm watching most carefully is just where the lower momentum state in the northern hemisphere is moving. It's kind of moving farther to the north. And I want to know how long it lives there. And I don't know the answer to that right now. I've seen forecasts of it, but some of the forecasts have been underperforming, overperforming. I don't know which. They've not been performing. And we've maintained our lower atmospheric momentum state. Now, there's a contribution from the southern hemisphere as well, but this needs to be monitored. And why it needs to be monitored is for the risk of maintaining that lower momentum state into summer. And if we do that, then we continue to have these major precipitation disparity problems. You know what I'm saying? It allows places that get dry to also get very hot, while places that stay wet are going to stay cool, and they're going to stay very wet. And I think we're going to have a summer where the precipitation statistics vary wildly across the United States. So that brings me to this. I have on the left the models initialized in April for the NMME, and on the right I have the newest run. Pattern-wise, very similar. Magnitude-wise, different. Matt brought this up yesterday. So for example, if I'm in Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, and I was looking at the previous run, we're at the deepest shade of being anomalously dry for summer, June, July, August. The new run is not looking that way. Pattern is still there, but the anomalies decreased in the risk for drought in the central U.S. While that happened, the European model went the opposite. Take a look. Previous ECMWF run, current. Look at the dryness here versus the new forecast. It went a full stage in the anomalies down. Now remember, we don't look at this and take the magnitude. We look at this and look for pattern. It's still wetter here in both runs. That Mississippi seems to be a dividing line. We talked a bit about maybe why the model was drier in through here given the soil moisture deficits. We talked about the active southwest monsoon. We began the week with a discussion on the PDO, and what we finished the week on was a discussion on the PMM, the cold water off the Gulf of Alaska. So I want to do this before I touch on that point and wrap this whole thing up. Back in May, this time in May in 2023, this was the June, July, August forecast from the European model, which is the one that trended drier. Let's do a little model verification. What did it predict? Very weak, almost absent southwest monsoon, but wet right in through this corridor. drier northern plains, upper Midwest into the Great Lakes, mixed around the Appalachian Mountains in southeast. Okay, that was what was forecast in May for June, July, August. Let's do a little verification. Okay, we did have a weak southwest monsoon, but north of it, man, remember the beginning of June was super wet here. It got dry later. Were we dry in the upper Midwest? Yeah. Was there a wet corridor in through here? There was, but not well, I guess it was mixed, right? But you could say that the model missed the southeast. Again, this is the forecast, and what you've got here is the verification. Now we're going to do this and just go back to the forecast from 1 year ago for June, July, August of 2024. So got a picture in your mind? That was the forecast last May for June, July, August. And there's the verification. Okay, were we drier here and here with a wet central U.S.? So look at these dry areas. This is what was forecast. Drier with wet. So you can't say that this model doesn't have a clue, right? I think it does. It's painting a pattern. It's not painting exactitudes, right? So again, I just come back to it and I say, there it is. Is there something to the ECMWF? So last year, we were looking at ocean temperatures that, look like this. And from May to June, this got colder. By August, it got really cold. And as that got colder and this stayed colder and La Nina built, what did we see? We had plenty of rain until August, and then it got bone dry here for August, September, and October. It was the timing that was everything. The cold in this area arrived late summer. The PDO dropped like a rock. The PMM was already there. Take a look at the Atlantic. Very warm. We were breeding hurricanes in the Caribbean, the Gulf, everywhere. All right, that's a year ago. This is this year. Atlantic is not as hot. The PMM is much more established. And what I'm telling you is over the next 40 days, right there is where you have to watch. Because if I'm watching that, that's that PDO complement to the PMM. Cold water here. And if that goes and this goes, the West Coast does not see an extreme hot summer. It still gets hot in the West, right? And what we end up getting is some sort of ridging event. Is it Kansas? Is it Montana? Is it Minnesota? I don't know. But that's what that would do. So you watch with me for the next 40 days right there. That's it. That's all I've got for you today. I'll talk to you on Monday. Have a good weekend. Thanks.